Hi, everyone. This is Coach Sorobey, the high school debate coach at SSIS. I'm doing a little webinar for you today on what judges look for in public forum debate, but this is meant not for the judges, but more for the debaters. So, first, I'll start with just some simple tips for success. That's more aimed at beginner debaters, middle school and novice debaters. We'll talk a little bit about some considerations for the public forum format, and finally, the deciding factors that will be what the judge uses to determine whether you win or lose. So, starting with actually how the debate will be won. Um, if you're in a tournament, what matters much more than your speaker score is your win loss record. So, win loss record counts in terms of advancement. The more wins. So, if you win every round, it's likely you'll move into elimination rounds. Um, in only the case where there's a tie between win loss records do the tabulators start to look at your speaker scores, and then the higher speaker scores will win. So ultimately, you need to work together with your partner because winning the debate is a team effort, and you're only as strong as your weakest link, your whole argument. So if one speaker is getting perfect 30s and the other is more like 26, because you will be scored between a range of 25 to 30, then it doesn't matter. It's more about the wins and losses. Um, if you should get a bye, which means you don't get matched against an opponent in that round, then it counts as a win. So that won't count against you. It's kind of a freebie in that case. But what you really want to do is win the debate, and that's going to be done with logic and facts. So, some simple things to remember at the beginning are that judges are volunteers from the public. So they might be teachers or parents, grandparents. They're people who have someone in their life who debates, but they themselves are not necessarily experts in debate. Therefore, you want to start by introducing yourself, be polite, ask for their preferences in advance. For example, does it bother you if I speak too quickly? Because if you try to jam so much into your time of speech and they can't understand you, that's not in your advantage. They will do their best to give you feedback and make a fair decision, but they're giving their time to make this happen. So you need to appreciate it. And first and foremost, I would say don't go around the hallway after a decision has been made because the judges are humans and they're still in the building, and don't grumble about them. Don't be like, oh, that judge was so unfair and so out to get us. They really are trying to make the most fair decision based on the facts. You might not love the decision, you may not win. However, politeness, please and thank yous, and sportsmanship in debate go a long way. So, here are some tips for you. First, you should have a device on which you can time yourself. And it's okay to have the public forum time guidelines printed out or written in your notebook or on your laptop somewhere. That's not cheating. You need to know how much time you have, and you want to get as close to filling it. So if you have 4 minutes for a speech, speaking for only 2 minutes is not a good thing, but don't go overtime. Some judges do not feel comfortable to cut you off, but if you've only got 4 minutes and you've spoken for five, if you continue to do that throughout several speeches through the debate, you put us over time, you waste the judge's time, and you put the tournament behind in terms of delays. So it's important to remember what the timing is. Time yourself with a phone beside you so you can see, or have your partner show it to you, and keep as close to the allocated time as possible. That said, if you don't have substance to fill that time, that's not good either. So don't just ramble and repeat the same thing for 4 minutes. Plan your speeches ahead, the ones that can be pre planned, and really try to use all of the time, but not more. Explain terminology. So, again, the judges are members of the public, And we're dealing with some very technical topics a lot of the time in public forum debate. So don't use a lot of acronyms without explaining what they stand for. Spell out what you mean. So you can expect the judge to have a basic understanding of the resolution, but it's your job as a debater to convince them, to explain the issues fully. They will appreciate your clarity, and it will also illustrate your knowledge better. Finally, respect is important for your opponents. Yes, you're debating them, but you're debating their ideas, not them as a person. And I wouldn't attack absolutely everything that they present for you. Some of their points you can concede. You can say, well, I acknowledge that, as the opponent says, this might actually help. This, and this are not helpful. So oppose their ideas, do that in a respectful way, and don't oppose every single one of their ideas. Pick and choose the ones that you think are deciding factors in the debate. You need to flow, which is a fancy word for take notes as a debater. And this is what you should do. So you should go over each of the speeches, particularly the constructive and the rebuttal, of both your side and your opponents. Use point form code. A lot of PF judges and debaters use these 4 columns to flow their debates. You want to take note of their key contentions and subpoints. You want to note down their evidence. So, for example, a card that they cite, the last name, and the year of a source, because those are things that you might challenge, as well as the impact. So, when you're looking at your flow, some things that you're questioning in your head pretty quickly is, did their evidence actually prove the point that they were trying to make? Is their evidence credible? Have they given you reasons why their argument matters? So, all of those are things you can question in crossfires and in your rebuttals. And therefore, you need some reminders on your flow sheet. You may have an iPad or something that helps you take notes. Good old paper is hard to beat. Even though you'll be using your laptop for your own information, a lot of debaters will still choose to use a notebook for their note taking during the round. That's what I would encourage. All right, now on to a little bit more details with public forum format. Your argument matters more than your style. That's the first thing to know. Facts that you present that your opponent does not challenge, stand up and win. So the judges also got a flow sheet, and whatever pro presents and con doesn't successfully challenge, or vice versa, is what the judge is supposed to make their decision based off of. So what you want to do is respond to what your opponents bring up. Why are their claims wrong or non-unique to their side? Why could it be possible in both the pro and the con outcome? Consider the impact. The judge weighs who wins based on whose case presents the greatest impact. So what impact means is the so what. Why does the evidence matter? Why does the argument matter? So in the case of the resolution for the fall, November, December 2023, I guess winter, in the case of the student loan debt should be forgiven resolution, how does forgiving a student loan debt help people? Does it encourage more equality within society? Does it lead to a better quality standard of living for all members of society? Quantify that. Give me numbers as a judge. Give amount of dollars that could be saved. Talk about the economy. Talk about the impact on human lives. And finally, you're going to weigh that in final focus for your judge. So a few weighing factors to consider are scope. How many people are affected? magnitude, the strength of that effect. And with magnitude, I can explain it like this. If you save $1, that doesn't have a lot of strength versus saving a life. So it's not how many, it's how strong. And probability, how likely is your plan to work? There are other weighing factors, but these ones are the most prevalent and most impactful. Winning the round. The judge will be given a rubric that they can take or leave, but as mentioned before, the points that are given are between 25 and 30. Generally, the speaker points are higher for the winning team, but there is such a thing as a low point win where logic on one side is much better. However, the speaking style could leave something to be desired. So 25 is quite a weak score. 30 is outstanding, perfect, unbelievably great. You won't get a score under 25 unless you don't show up, forfeit, or use incredibly rude language or are really disrespectful. So I hope there are no 24s in any tournaments. 25 would be the lowest you could get. It is a combination of arguments, rebuttal, organization, and presentation, but the arguments and the evidence going into this are really more impactful in determining your win than the way you present your ideas. So overall, the arguments that stand, the ones that haven't been crossed off by what the other side has said essentially on the judge's flow sheet, are how the judge will take a look at the end of the debate and determine the round. So if pro has still 2 great points that con has not been able to challenge, and con doesn't have any points because pro has successfully called them into question, then pro wins. Style is less important than the facts. The ultimate decision made by the judge depends on a few things. So the pro team will win if they can prove that the world would be better off if the resolution was passed into action. So in the case of the November-December 2023, if student loans were forgiven, the federal government erases those student loans, life will be better for more people than if the government continues to collect the repayment on the student loans. If you're the con team, you win by proving simply that status quo, or the way things are right now, is best. Leave it alone. Don't change it. The way it is likely less of a problem than if we invest money or make the proposed change. This is something that you can really illustrate in the final focus or the last 2-minute speech that each team has. That's a great place to tell the judge, and you can speak directly to the judge. Call them judge. If you don't know their name, that's okay. Just say, judge, the pro world is blah, blah, blah. And that means if we pass this resolution, this is what would happen. Or in the con world, blah, blah, blah. Talk to them about what it would be like if this is passed or if this isn't passed, and spin that in your favor. The final note I'll leave us with is that judges sign a pledge before they enter into judging any debate tournament, not to let their biases influence them. So it shouldn't be the case that a judge just decides because they don't like student loans or something or other, and you present facts that go against what they personally believe. They sign a pledge not to let that influence them and decide based on the facts presented in the debate. However, something, even if you feel like a bias has influenced, you can't challenge a judge's decision. The judge's decision is final unless they've made a mistake entering their scores based on what they thought, then there's really nothing we can do. So know that tournament officials will not hear any grievances brought against judges because we love our judges so much. We cannot make this activity happen without a whole lot of volunteers. So if your family members or friends have volunteered to judge, tell them a big extra thank you, because we can't make these kinds of events possible without them. And therefore, we're not going to go around questioning their judgments. It is their judgment, and they are members of the public, and they have decided that whichever team was the winner, and that's not going to be overturned. So there's no point to complain. It is a great idea to thank them for their time, smile, be kind, and appreciate that they helped make that experience happen for you. All right, that's all I have to share. Thank you so much, and good luck in your debates.